The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by TheOp, also known as USAopoly.
The Dice Tower, episode 733, Collection Quantity.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, One and Done is back for an episode, and Mandy and I are going to serve up a pick up and deliver pie. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Dice Tower podcast, and it's so awesome that you are joining us. Heyo, Mandy, I don't know if you could keep up, but as all y'all know, we have been naming our episodes after a poll that we run in the Dice Tower's Board Game Geek Guild. And I gotta say, last episode's poll, Animal Companions, Mandy, I think it was our best ever.
Right? Well, come on. As soon as you mention animals, people are in it to win it. They love it.
It was really, really fabulous and amazing to see that. Thank you, everybody who voted. And more specifically, everybody who commented with photos of their pets. So last episode's title poll was all about what pets do you have? And so we did the poll as like canine, feline, rodentia, that kind of thing. And here's where we landed with the finals. 35.8, so essentially 36% of us have canine pets. Mm-hmm. And then 34.5% of us have feline pets.
Fair, okay.
Okay, cool. Now, 20% just said no pets. That's cool. And 11% said they don't have pets, but they wish they did. Because, you know, sometimes places you live don't allow them, or you're not in the right stage of life, or whatnot.
Sure.
But what I thought was really, really fun, 7.5% of people have aquatic pets. 3.5% have avian pets. 3% of folks have reptilian pets, and 10% of folks have rodent pets, like rats and ferrets and things like that. And 0% of us have equine pets. So no horses or donkeys in the Dice Tower family that we could tell from our limited poll.
Okay.
But some of the discussion in the thread got really fun around horses. About like, why don't we like horses? And somebody actually said there's nothing quite like that new horse smell. And when I read that, Mandy, I laughed for a couple minutes. That was just
wait
hilarious.
Now, new horse smell is in good or new horse smell is in bad?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was just like, there's nothing like that new horse smell. I'm like, really?
There are some animals.
Okay.
I guess not really a pet, although my friend was rescuing some foxes. Let me tell you, there's nothing like a rescue fox smell. Oh my goodness. That's a thing. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. So, not pets, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
I did not know that. I have learned something, and I think I'm okay not knowing the reality of that one. But of course, folks, besides just the votes themselves, what was really, really great is people took the time to post photos of their pets in the thread, in the comments. We have amazing, adorable animals in the Dice Tower family. I gotta tell you, if you don't often go to the guild or don't go through all the threads or don't typically do the poll, I highly recommend you go back to the guild and take a look at this one and give it a scroll, because it's just fun and it's such a feel good to see all these lovely little pets that we have. And it was great to see them. A number of people shared pets that had passed, but they were still dear to their hearts. And a lot of you shared your different pets, like some reptiles in there that were beautiful. I loved it, every post of it. And honestly, I encourage y'all, if you still have photos to share, keep it going. Keep on dropping them in there, because it's been an absolute delight to see.
I feel like I need to go, and I've been really busy, so I haven't had a chance to drop my dogs in there. And I know I've seen a lot of different ones, but I got to tell you, I love pictures where dogs have their tongue out, just like a little,
yep,
or cats even.
Derp.
Just a little tongue. Or even my friend has a ferret, and they do that. It's so cute. Or just like the little lips. It looks like they're smiling, and all you can see are their little lips. It's so cute. I know. I'm obsessed. So I'm looking at the thread now, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I can't. I just want to like boop those noses, tongues, and lips.
And this episode, we went back to the gaming world for our poll. And we're just going to now take a deep breath, folks. We're going to go back to collection size.
Oh, dear.
So let's take a look at how many games we typically own. Now, let's remind ourselves, size doesn't matter when it comes to your collection. There are a variety of limitations on how big a collection can be. Financial, spatial, everything like that. And what really matters with games, theoretically, is that you have games that you love and that you play with your family and your friends and that bring you joy. So this is not a competitive thing. Bigger isn't better. But let's just see, where are we in terms of, how do we collect games? Small boxes, big boxes, whatever. So we're going to put a poll up and we'll put some quantity ranges in there and drop a vote and we'll see where we land. Mandi, I don't even know. To be honest, I've lost track. I don't really count anymore. I actually, if I'm going to vote in this poll, I got to do some counting.
I had a spreadsheet that I was maintaining, and I know someone else showed me their spreadsheet that they had, and it was fantastic. I love a good spreadsheet, but I have to tell you, since we were home for that period, during the quarantine and whatnot, I just kind of got lazy. So I'm guaranteeing you it is in the upward hundreds area. But yeah, I'm scared.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what people vote and where kind of the numbers land on this one. I know it's a little touchy. It can be a little touchy, and legitimately so. But I'm curious, so we're putting that poll up. All right, folks, as we said at the top of the show, we've got a one and done segment for you this episode, which it's been a while. But we're reviving that for a show, and we've got games that we've been playing. So let's get to it.
So, what have you been playing lately?
All right, everybody. It's that time for games played. And, well, I don't know. I have a very eclectic list here. Some are new, some are a bit older. I don't know. Thought I'd mix it up a little bit, keep you on your toes. So the first one is actually an expansion, and I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure I talked about Smartphone Inc. on the podcast. I definitely know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I know Tom and Eric potentially have also talked about it, but we'll just do a quick recap, and then I'm going to be talking about the expansion, Smartphone Inc. Status Update 1.1. Seems like a very interesting title, but now you know that is the expansion.
Very thematic title, really.
It does. Go with it. So I'm here for it. This is designed by Ivan Lashin. Art is by Victor Miller-Gausa, and it's published by Arcane Wonders. It plays 1 to 5 players in about 60 to 90 minutes, and it retails for about $58 for the base game and about $28 for the expansion Canadian. So it might be a little bit different from different places. So the overarching theme or idea for Smartphone Inc. is that you're becoming a CEO of one of the largest smartphone producing companies, and you obviously want to extend your reach and sell to different parts of the world. And this is what you'd call I think they call it an economic simulation Euro game. So if that appeals to you, this might be the game for you. In the base game, it's played over, and with the expansion, over 5 rounds, and you have a programming element in the game. So this is where everybody has a country that they're kind of assigned to, so to speak, but you have these boards that have different symbols on them, and you have a moment to program to kind of place your boards on top, and you may have improvement tiles, which will kind of alter some of the symbols you see on the board, and depending on which ones are showing or which ones are covered, will allow you to take a specific type of action or gain you resources that you're going to use to kind of put on the board and sell. So getting the service, if you will, for sticking with the theme, to different countries connecting. So the game takes place over 5 rounds, and the player who makes the most money wins. And within those 5 rounds, you have different things that happen. So you're going to have your programming phase, and this is where you're going to set your price for how much you're going to sell to the market. And this is tricky, right? If you want to sell really high, really low, because you might be limited on who you can sell to, right? Because they all have different requirements and how much they're willing to pay, so to speak. You also have an opportunity to get more improvement tiles. So those are tiles that can change some of the symbols on your board or give you more of a certain symbol that you want. You can gain technologies in the game, and this is going to allow you to get things like Wi-Fi or 4G. Yes, I know. I said 4G, but keep in mind this was made before the 5G, LTE, and all
right?
that stuff kind of happened, right? And we were playing recently, and some of the symbols, I was like, I recognize this symbol, but I feel like it's not a thing that we use anymore. I don't know. So if you haven't seen the game, you should go check it out, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that from 1993 or whatever. So
yeah, it gets dated, huh?
It does, like really quickly. But these technologies allow you to broaden, your areas that you can provide services to, and otherwise selling to those specific areas. And keeping in mind turn order is really important in this game, because if someone goes before you, they might be able to go and sell to a certain country with certain requirements. You're like, but wait, I wanted to go there. Well, you didn't go first, and that's based on your pricing, right?
Yep.
If you price too high, you're not going to be the one getting to sell first to these places. It's going to be the person or people with the lower pricing. So there are a variety of things that you're going to do, and that's kind of some of them that happen throughout a round, and then you start all over again. Now, the expansion adds some modules, and we threw a bit of everything in there. I think there are 4 new modules in it, and there's a hardcore mode. There's a board that is specifically for 2 to 3 players, which I have to tell you makes a huge difference in the game. So if you're used to playing with 2 or 3 players on the bigger board, I do find the newer board does give you that tension, that tightness, because you have, fewer places to sell to and to expand to. So it really forces you to get in there quick and really dominate certain markets. So the 2 to 3 player board for me was huge. And I played with Ashley the Shark, and well, we all know how this game went. Okay, I'm actually not bad, but I don't know what it is. I decided to go high with pricing, and it did not work out for me on that 2 to 3 player board. So I know to lower the expectations for next time. But we both commented on how much better it was with how much better it was with that player count, being at 2 or 3 on that smaller board. So I definitely recommend it if that's the player count that you're used to playing with. That board, beautiful. It worked really well. There are also CEO miniatures in the game. This was the part of the game that I kind of went, yeah, as in like, I don't understand why that was a thing. And that sounds harsh, but they literally sit on the board in where, in a certain spot. They rarely move. They're supposed to help with a specific technology. And I have to tell you, if you end up getting the technology, you don't really need the CEO to help you out. We had played it recently, and I just found they sat there. I didn't find, maybe I just wasn't understanding it. I had another friend who also said they didn't see the need for them either. It wasn't enough to have it as like an expansion or added thing. And then the bases for mine were super loose, so it was more of a pain than anything to have them. So I just didn't see the added benefit in having the CEOs, to be honest. So maybe I missed something. Maybe my friends missed something. I just didn't see the benefit. I don't see the need to play with these at all. I did enjoy the objectives. You had these new objectives that came out, and you could only complete one of them a round. So even if you could do 2 of them, you kind of want to do the one that you think somebody else is going to do, so you can snake it first. That's horrible, but that's how it goes. There were 12 points. Hello? Yeah, if you can get those, it's great. But I did like the fact that even though there were, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I think it's based on player count. I think there were 5 or 6 of them, and there were 12 points each. You will never be able to get all of them. This is what happened in our game, because one of them might say you need to have this specific thing, and then one of them might be the opposite of that. So then you have to kind of make a choice. So it doesn't make it so someone can get all of them, which I did appreciate. So it'll allow you to kind of take a plan of action, and know that you may not get all of them, but you could still get a decent amount. I liked that. There were also new technologies that came to the game. And I like the fact that they listed out how it would benefit you. Some of them are going to be more resource, giving you more resources. Some of them will make the game a bit more puzzly. I like that they set you up at that. You didn't have to play with the structure they've given you, but it does kind of guide you if you were new to the expansion. So I did appreciate that. Then there's a hardcore mode. I did not play with the hardcore mode because, well, if I can't even beat Ashley the Shark in like the normal mode with the expansion, how am I going to play this in hardcore mode to get smashed? So for those of you who are experts and say, hey, I think I'm an expert at this game, definitely that's for you. I appreciate it being in there, so it does give you more of that replayability and doing something different. So overall, I liked Smartphone Inc. to begin with. It is one of the more simple economic games, and I feel like this is a game I could play with a group of friends that are maybe not hardcore gamers. They're enjoying the games, but want something like just a little bit more than, let's say, a Splendor or something like that. I could play this with them and easily explain it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they would be comfortable and not overwhelmed. And they would still get a bit of that feeling for an economic type game that they might be interested in. And that might kind of lead them to try something a bit more. So this, I feel, does that. The expansion, really big on the 2 to 3 player board. I thought that was genius. Really well done. Did not care for the CEO miniatures. I feel that was a bit of a wasted opportunity there. Hopefully they will do something with them, or maybe just remove them altogether. So I enjoyed it for the most part, but that board was probably the standout for 2 to 3 players. So Smartphone Inc. status update 1.1. If you're playing with fewer players, I would definitely invest in the expansion. Oh, something to note. If you want it all to fit in one box, you're going to have to get rid of the inserts. It comes with some nice inserts, but if you want it all in one box, you will have to.
The ones that help you sort through your pieces that hold your little plastic bits.
You cannot keep those and put the expansion in the box. It won't happen. You will have 2 separate boxes.
Well, people have to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, first up for me, Riftforce. 2-player only game designed by Carlo Bortolini, and the art is by Miguel Coimbra. And this is published by One More Time Games, and I think in North America it's distributed by Capstone Games. Riftforce is a card game, and cards are going to lay out to create the quote-unquote rift, which are 5 cards that have a, bright pink crack down like this pit, cavern, cave thing. And it's basically a lane battling game in a way. So you've got that laid out, and then you are going to be playing against your opponent, playing cards to your side of that row of rift cards. There are guilds here. So there are 10 different factions or guilds, and they are comprised of cards numbered 5 through 7. And each guild has an elemental. And elemental is like maybe say the leader card. And it actually doesn't come into play. It just sits off to the side because that's where the card's power or the guild's power is outlined very specifically on that. So you can kind of leave them out and just reference them. So what's going to happen is you and your opponents are going to take turns drafting a guild. So when you start the game, you each will have 4 different guilds that you control. You're going to take those cards numbered 5 through 7 that are, they've got beautiful art, and then they're clearly labeled which faction they belong to with a little icon. You shuffle them all together. So now you've got a deck of cards all mixed together, these 4 different guilds in a deck. Draw some cards, and then you start playing. You're going to have the choice to play cards to the rift. You're going to have the choice to activate cards, or you're going to have the choice to draw new cards. And that's the only way you're going to get new cards is you have to take an action to draw them. One of the things I really like is that when you play them, you can play cards of the same value or the same suit, up to 3 at a time. Similarly, when you activate cards, you may activate up to 3 of the same value. So I can activate up to 3 number 5 cards, or you can activate up to 3 of the same suit. So maybe I activate 3 rock cards. Okay, cool. To activate, you actually have to discard a card from your hand that matches those. So if I'm going to activate 3 5s, I have to discard a 5 from my hand. Cool. When you destroy an enemy's card across the rift by doing enough damage to it that it meets or exceeds the value. So if I'm attacking a number 5 card and I do 5 damage, then it goes away. You earn a point of Rift Force. And the game ends when a player hits 12 Rift Force, even turns, and the highest score wins. So a lot of times it may just be 12 Rift Force. Very straightforward game. But the nuance comes in these guild specifics and the powers that they have. Because what happens is that each guild has the one power associated with its elemental. So maybe a card, when it's out there and you activate it, it'll do 2 damage to the forward enemy card. Or maybe you've got an ability that when you play it, it does a damage. And then when you activate it, it does 2 damage. Or maybe you've got the air card, and first you have to move it, and then it does 1 damage to the forward cards in 3 different rifts adjacent to you. So there's a lot of different nuances to these elementals and the powers that they have. And drafting those guilds so that you have powers that really complement each other is absolutely critical in this game. The synergies, like the first time you play and it's kind of random, you don't know what you're doing, you're like, ooh, that power sounds cool, or that power doesn't sound cool. But then you play a game and then you look back and you realize, oh no, these 2 guilds would be amazing together because this would let me move it And then this lets me ensure I do 2 damage to it. That kind of thing. So figuring that out is super duper important and something that will come with more experience. And definitely as I played more games, I started being more intentional in how I drafted. Not necessarily better, but at least I was had other thought process behind what I was choosing. And then that play itself is really interesting in terms of when do you choose to play cards? Where are you playing cards? When do you choose to activate? And when do you choose to draw up, right? Because when you draw, that is an entire turn. And that kind of gives your opponent an opportunity. So if you can time it well, you can kind of nullify that opportunity for them, that kind of thing. Simple game, simple rules, tons of nuance. I really enjoyed it. And it is one of those, and I don't like often saying this. So the base game is great. Solid game. Explore the different factions together. Figure out how you like to play and the rhythm of playing and activating all that other stuff. But I was very glad that they just recently announced that they have Riftforce Beyond coming out, which is an expansion that's going to add, I think, 10 new guilds. And I love that. I'm very excited about that because it's really in creating those guild combinations and those elemental ability mix-ups that you can kind of get them to almost, I don't want to say engine build because that's not really the right mechanism here, but you certainly can get these combinations going that are very powerful and very fun to pull off. I'm excited for the expansion because I think it will just add a lot to an super solid base game experience. And that's Riftforce.
See, I wish I played more 2-player games, and people are like, oh, it's great to have 2-player games, but I feel like I always play with more than 2.
Sure. Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
tricky because it sounds really interesting and it'd be great to have, but definitely if people are in that 2-player, I only play with this person, do you feel like this is one that you should have in your collection?
I definitely think it's worth taking a look. I really enjoy it. It definitely is aggression, right? Okay. So you're definitely attacking your opponent. If you don't like that kind of thing, then probably not for you if you prefer a more abstract experience. But I think there's a lot to like here, and I'm a huge fan of 2-player only games because I believe that it allows the designers to really tightly balance them.
Right.
So I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to exploring it more.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. So let's talk about Islands in the Mist. This is designed by Volker Schachtele. Art is by Michael Menzel, and it's published by Stronghold Games. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 45 to 60 minutes, and it retails for about $47 Canadian. I don't think this is a super new game because I've seen people talk about it, I think, a couple years ago, but I only received it as a review copy in the past month or so. So in this game, I don't know if the title gives it away, but you're going to be having a balloon, and it's like a little wooden balloon, so air balloon token, and it's going to be moving around a board where hexes are going to go out. So the board has a variety of terrains, and you're going to have one person, so you are going to be the one moving your balloon, but the second player is going to be the one rolling the dice. You're like, okay, no big deal, they're rolling the dice. Well, let's be clear here. They have a little bit of control over the dice because the dice are going to tell you the direction in where you're moving, okay? And it may have another symbol on it that gives you some kind of bonus as well. So, but they do have the opportunity to reroll if they're like, I don't really like where that's going, which can affect you. All right, so that makes a big difference. So what's going to happen is, as I said before, one person is going to be, well, we're all going to be moving, but the one person is going to be controlling the die for that specific round, and all the players are going to be moving their balloons based on if it's a, north, south, east, west sort of situation. Now, your balloon has a starting space on the board, and it's kind of in the center-ish area, and you'll notice that there are a variety of terrains. And yes, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but they have like mountains and greenlands and marsh areas. And there are even some areas that have negative points, which is not good. And remember I told you about hexagon tiles? Well, those are going to go out and you want to try and cover those. Otherwise, you're going to get negative points at the end of the game. Movement is tricky in this game because you have to move based on where your balloon landed from the last time. And you're like, oh, that's easy. Well, sometimes you can overshoot. This can be difficult if you're trying to get to a specific area because you can only place hexagon tiles around where you are. So if you're like, oh, I really want to connect these different terrains because I probably should have said this to start with, to end the game or to get to the end of the game, you need to connect all of the terrains to your starting kind of middle space that you started with. So you want to branch out. Moving is fine, but sometimes you get the die that says you need to, let's say, move northeast, and you're like, no, I need to go southwest. You can do that, but it's going to cost you. And this is where we have energy in the game. Energy is what's going to drive you if you want to turn around, move a certain direction, but it's one of those things where you have to slow down, so you have to pay to slow down, and then now you got to pay to move. If you want to move fewer spaces, you have to pay. If you want to move no spaces, you have to turn direction, you have to pay. So energy is really big in this game. So you're like, oh my goodness, this sounds like I'm never going anywhere. Well, you kind of have to go with it. On a turn, after the dice have been rolled and you know what direction you're going to be moving, the player whose turn it is going to get to choose from, I think it's 4 tiles, and they have a whole bunch of hexagon tiles there. And you say, okay, I'm going to choose from this row, and you take those tiles and you get to place them on top of your board, providing that you have space to put them there. And then from there, you spend energy to move them out, to build them out on your board. Okay. And we now also added some of the expansions or variants to the game, which allowed for, what's the name? This is where I was right. The harbor. So the harbor, when you're moving, you can't move off the map. But if you have the harbor, you can move off the map and kind of go into this harbor space, which is great because it gives you some other tiles maybe you wouldn't have had access to in the main kind of market area. The problem is if you overshoot, you might not be able to get as many tiles as you want. Like if you go to the first space, you might only be able to get 1. If you go to, further along, then you might be able to get 3. So space counting is really important here when you're trying to get into the harbor or any space on the board. So that was one of them. And then we also had the extra space for hexagons on the top. And then we had some additional tiles that you could acquire if your energy token got past a certain point. Then instead of taking tiles from the kind of market area, you could take one of these special tiles and put them on the board. And they were very helpful for end game scoring and things like that. So this is hard to picture. There's a lot of things happening. All you really need to know is terrains, hexagons, connect them, and try and get groupings as large as you can of these specific types of terrain, because those are going to give you points, as well as those special tiles. That's really the takeaway. And try and collect energy, because that's going to help you change direction if you can't get there. In essence, that's the game. So overall, I have to start with the art. I have to tell you, and I'm not to say that it's bad. It just wasn't for me. Like, it just didn't draw me in specifically. If I saw this in the store, probably would not have picked it up. I know that's a horrible thing for me to say. You should never judge things first, based on, I don't know, but it happens. And that's why art is so important. People overlook that, but art is very important to kind of pulling people in. Not everybody's going to like everything. And I thought it was just me, but I talked to a few of my other friends and they said, no, it probably wouldn't be one that would draw me in. But after me talking about the gameplay, they're like, oh, that does actually sound pretty interesting. And I feel that it's not getting a lot of attention. Like, I don't know, Suzanne, have you heard a lot about this game?
I haven't heard a lot about it. I do have a copy, but I have not played it yet. And so it's been really interesting to listen to you actually talk about it. So I'm getting a better sense of the game now when I get it to the table. Yeah,
like I hadn't heard about it until it showed up. And I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a try. But I was kind of putting it off. So I was happy that I did. But this also brings me back to another game we had talked about, Dungeon Draft, where I wasn't particular about the art and it ended up being a super good game. So, sometimes you just have to dive right in. Impact on turn order. So this is important. Remember, I was telling you, right? That second player gets to roll the die, and then they do have an opportunity to I don't really like that. And they can change the direction. While you might be like, yes, and they're like, no, and roll again and change it to something else. They have that opportunity. So that's really important, and I do like that because they can change it up a little bit. And I'm a bit of a tactical player, so I like kind of working with what happens as it happens versus like planning, 5 steps ahead. People who are planners are probably going to hate that, but I think it shakes it up a bit and I'm here for it. So I do like how that changed things a little bit. And then it causes people to really manage their energy, because that's what you're going to need to spend in order to change the movement or direction that you want to go. Something else that's really big in the game, the first person to connect all the coastlines, so all the different terrains, to your center tile, you get 10 points. Okay. And anyone who does it after that will get 5. So you want to be that first person to get those points. Right. So, I mean, really pushing the game and definitely pushing you toward doing it the fastest. Right. So I really appreciated that. I did also like the harbor. This was part of the expansion, which allowed you to kind of come off the board and go into the harbor, because it allowed you to get more tiles of a specific terrain maybe that you weren't getting. It did provide you that opportunity, versus without that, you're kind of on the board and you can't move past the board. So I do like that it does give you an opportunity to get a variety of different types of terrain. People didn't always use it. I guess, I don't know if they were just unsure or they just didn't see the benefit. And if you overshot, it was timing, right? You really had to make sure that you had the right amount of movement and timing to make it worthwhile. But I did appreciate the options being available. So overall for me, Islands in the Mist was one of those games where slapped my hand, shame on me. I didn't think I was going to like it. That was not a great attitude to go in with. It really wasn't. And
I'm really glad that you actually physically slapped your hand there a little bit.
It was not a good attitude to have. And I was pleasantly surprised when I played it and we enjoyed it. Now, I did find it longer than what it says on the box. It says 45 to 60 minutes.
But come on. What?
No.
What game box? The time that they put on the side. Come on. When is that ever accurate?
And we played with and I normally play games with about 3 to 4 people. This was a 3-player game that I'm referencing right now. 4 was slightly longer, but we also played with all of the expansions. So just saying. But yeah, definitely give yourself more into like the hour and a half mark for your first game. You might even say a couple hours just to get through the rules and understanding everything, especially if you're playing with the expansions or variants. So Islands in the Mist, I would try it. Don't do what I did. Give it a whirl. Oh, I feel like there's a joke in there somewhere. Anyway, you should definitely try it. So, good game.
I don't know about that joke, Mandy.
I don't know. I think that was
You're veering into pun territory. Don't disappoint me. Well, firmly planted to the ground is my next game, The Great Plains. This is in the Lookout Spiel 2-player line of games, which I talk about every time one comes out because I love the series in general, and I'm always going to buy the games and try them no matter what, period.
Yep.
Great Plains is designed by Trevor Benjamin and Brett J. Gilbert, and the art is by, Clemens Franz, which is lovely. And really, this is an area control game for 2 players. So you're going to get a small handful of hex-shaped tiles, and the art is full of little hexagons on those hex-shaped tiles. So you're going to lay those tiles out so it creates a board, and of course, it's somewhat randomized. The layout is randomized because of the art on the tiles. But typically spaces are going to be like a mountain or this yellowish grassy area or this greenish plains area. I'm not quite sure what the actual terrain is supposed to be. And then you get a big passel of your player meeples, which are either a fox or a snake, which is an interesting combo. And then you get 3 little tent tiles. The first phase of the game has players taking turns putting tents out onto the board, wherever they want, basically. There's actually tent spaces kind of outlined on the tiles, so you have to place them there. And then the second phase of the game is just players taking turns putting their meeples out almost wherever they want. You have to start adjacent to a tent or adjacent to another meeple of yours that's already on the board, so that's why your tent placement is very important. Ultimately, at the end of the game, you want to control the meadows that are created by these yellow spaces. And sometimes the art will have waterfalls in them. You want to control those especially because the waterfalls are bonus points if you control that zone. So it's just putting meeples out, and if you have the most meeples in a yellow zone, then you get the points for that zone. The bigger the zone, the more points. If it has waterfalls, the more points there. Really, really simple. Like that's the gameplay. Now, there are little icons spread on some of the spaces. There's a horse or a bird or a bear. If you place your meeple on a bird, then you get a matching token, similarly with the other ones. Birds let you fly over a mountain. Horses let you skip a space, so you don't have to be adjacent, so that's really nice. And bears let you replace an opponent's meeple with one of yours.
Ooh.
Indeed. You actually push their meeple, and if you push them into a mountain or off the board, that meeple goes away out of the game entirely. Dun, dun, dun. So it's not just about placing yours. There is a little bit of direct player interaction on this one. Not a ton, but a little bit. So the game is really in picking where you are placing your meeples, when you choose to kind of reveal your strategy in terms of going into a meadow. You're kind of calculating, if I show Mandy that I want that meadow now, well, she's going to jump in and take those spaces and make it harder for me to control it. So maybe if I slow play it and get her to go over to that other side of the board, that kind of thing. I like Great Plains. It is a pretty straightforward area control game for 2 players. It's very simple for the Lookout Spiel line. Now, maybe there's nuance that I wasn't picking up on in the times I played it, but we just found it very, very straightforward, which is not a bad thing. I think for more advanced players, when I think about another in this line that I just fell in love with, right, and will sing the praises forever in this line, also by Trevor Benjamin and Brett J. Gilbert, Mandala.
Yep.
Like, there was, oh my gosh, right? There's this extra nuance as you figure out how you score and where you put the cards in the river and all this other stuff. Like, Mandala is just a stellar 2-player game by these designers. Great Plains feels like a step down in complexity, which means if you want that kind of deep, rich, subtly complex experience, Great Plains isn't going to have that from what I experienced.
Right.
What it is very approachable. It's very easy to teach, very quick and easy to set up, very quick to play. So if you're looking for kind of that 2-player area control experience that's got some straightforward rules that you could maybe play with newer players or younger players, Great Plains is definitely worth a look. It's a lovely production and a solid game. Just lacked maybe that spark of and that complexity that I found in Mandala that I was kind of, when I saw the team on this one, I was kind of hoping for here.
Right.
So maybe it was an issue of expectations. But Great Plains, really a solid 2-player entry in this wonderful Lookout Spiel line.
There you go. I see a theme budding here, Suzanne, today with your games. 2 players.
I may have been playing a lot of 2-player games lately.
Got it. That's fair.
All right, now, Mandi, normally we would talk about, specifically just another random game, but you and I both have a one and done.
Yes.
And, it's been a while.
It has. And I think this one's going to be a little, I don't say controversial, but I feel like I may get some messages about this one.
Well, let's see.
Dearest game, it's not you, it's me. Except this time it very well may be you. Either way, you are a one and done. Best regards, me.
Oh boy, it has been a while since we've done a one and done, and well,
it's been ages.
I know, and it's just been, we've had some, pretty good games, but not to say that the ones we're talking about today are not good. That's not necessarily what that means. It just didn't click for me, or perhaps it didn't click for Suzanne. So, oh boy, I'm expecting the
well,
messages.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see what you're trying to talk about, and I disagree with you on this one.
Yeah, so there you go, everybody. So
fight.
Everyone's waiting for it. Ding, ding, ding. So my one and done this week is Pax Pamir 2nd Edition. I'll wait for the gasps. It's designed by Cole Worley, art is by Cole Worley, and it's published by Whirligig Games. So for those who are not familiar, this is obviously stated in the title, 2nd Edition. I believe it was on Kickstarter last year, possibly, or the year before, and they came out with a very nice iteration of it. So it is a tableau builder. And the premise of this game is very much based in cards, right? So this is where you're going to take turns. Players are going to take turns purchasing cards from a kind of a central market and then playing those cards out in front of you in a single row, which I believe is called your court. And playing these cards were important because it's going to allow you to be able to do actions, additional actions, potentially providing gifts to your, and it's not a faction that they're called, and I apologize for, like I said, I've only played it the one time, and it is a big game, but there's like it's not a coalition. Do you remember the name, Suzanne? It's like
I don't. I'm terrible. Come on, Mandi, I'm terrible with thematic terms.
Yeah, so am I.
Stop
apparently. That. But you pick a specific kind of, I'm going to say color grouping, and in the game, I think the tokens are either pink, blue, or yellow, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And you have to pick one of those at the beginning of the game that your allegiance is going toward, and this is kind of where you want to build allegiance to on the map. And the map in this game is, in the version that I had anyway, it's like a cloth with different areas different types of countries, I guess you could say. And you want to try and get dominance in these types of areas in the coalition that you're representing. But this can change depending on cards that you've chosen, which can make it difficult because if you were in one that was dominating and then maybe you take a card that changes that allegiance, oh, good gravy. Maybe you don't have that and you have to work up toward that. So there are things in the games that will happen called a dominance check. And this is where, and I believe it is a coalition. I believe that is what they're called. If a single coalition has commanding lead during one of those checks, then the players loyal to that coalition will receive victory points based on their influence in that coalition. But it gets tricky because you have to look at how many kind of tokens are out on the board, and the difference between the tokens out and still kind of aside makes a difference if it will actually happen or be successful. This is going to sound so confusing. I felt confused as well when playing, so it's something that you definitely had to get used to, and it definitely made a bit more sense as you continued to play. Now, the game, I believe, endgame is triggered when a player gets a specific amount of points. The difference of points between players will end the game. I think for me with Pax Pamir, I think the theme in itself was just not a theme that I was particularly interested in. Doesn't mean it was a bad theme. And I have to really reiterate that because a lot of people think One and Done is a terrible game. No, it just didn't click for me. There was something about it that didn't work for me specifically. And I think the theme in this particular game, definitely it was talking about Afghanistan, being certain parts being fragmented, and you're trying to bring certain places together. And I think that in itself is, the way from what people have talked about, the way that it was covered was good. It just wasn't a theme for me that I could connect with. And it doesn't mean I have to connect with every theme in every game, but I just couldn't get there. And in that happening, I just don't think I could understand so much the premise of the game. This came into a discussion I was having with Suzanne where it's like, this is a type of game that seems like you have to play it multiple times to get it. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Cole has done some other games. I think Cole also did Oath. Did he not?
Yeah.
And I really like Oath and Oath again.
Root.
And Root. And I like those games. But I think I liked the art that accompanied it. I like the ideas behind those ones versus this one. I just didn't feel that connection. And I think people who are familiar with these PAX type games are going to be like, yeah, I get it, and might be totally into it. I get that. I just want to know if you think, and this is a kind of a question I present to you, is the onus on the game to make you interested, or is it on you to be interested? So let me explain that a little further. If you have to play a game multiple times to get it, is that something that should be a thing for you to be like, okay, you know what? I actually don't want to play this multiple times because I've had enough of the first play. Maybe I didn't fully understand it, but there's not enough to draw me in to continue playing it, whether it needs those additional plays or not. So who does that fall into? Does it fall into me as like, I should force myself to? Or should the game kind of have a hook? Yeah, you may have to play it a few times, but this is what we're going to do to draw you in to do that. So I kind of asked it as a question because I feel like this is the type of game where I asked myself this question. And I know not everyone's going to agree with that question, but it did make me kind of stop and think about that. We had a moment in the game where it was like, okay, we're learning. Okay, I kind of get it. Yeah, I'm feeling it. And then it just plateaued because we couldn't seem to get out of this loop of doing these checks. Like we just couldn't get out of the interaction just wasn't there. And maybe it's just the type of players we were. Maybe this just wasn't a game for us. Like the negotiation portion of the game, we didn't take advantage of that. It just wasn't a thing that we were interested in doing. And, that's on us because I did know that was an element of the game, but I thought, hey, I don't like bidding, but I liked tramways and the way they did it in that game. So it changed my mind, but I liked the way they did it. So I'm going to wrap it up because I don't want to keep babbling. But the question I presented to you earlier, I'd really love to know what people think about that. And this is something that maybe you can add, send it to me, or if you see me on social media, or even in the guild, we can maybe put something up. But I am curious because this just transcends through any of these types of games that require multiple plays. Is the onus on the game, or is it on us to keep going? And how does that happen? So PAX Pamir 2nd Edition, I get it. I know a lot of people really like it, and I get why you would like it. It just was not a game for me. I promptly sold the game, as I said, because it wasn't for me, but hopefully it goes to somewhere where it will be appreciated to someone who can understand the mechanics or is interested in the theme. So that's PAX Pamir 2nd Edition.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it, but I have enjoyed my experiences with PAX Pamir 2nd Edition. I will say, though, I have played with experienced players that helped make my first play of it very smooth and kind of ushered me through some of the areas of nuance that I would not have picked up on a first play just out of a rule book or out of watching a video and then giving it a whirl. And so I that may have made a really critical difference between your experience and my experience. And I appreciate a lot of what Cole is trying to do with Pax Pamir 2nd Edition, and I think that motivated me to really give it that time. But I do understand what you're saying, and certainly like the negotiation piece is one of the hardest parts for me in any game. But needless to say, I do not feel the same as you, and that's okay, because we all are allowed to have different feelings about games.
Absolutely.
And real quickly, on a very different end of the complexity and component spectrum, I have a little one and done. It is a new card game being published by Amigo called Help! This is designed by Kim Vandenbroek, and the art and graphic design is by Christine Hoffmeyer. Now, I will say up front, I typically, Kim Vandenbroek, she's a designer that I really appreciate being in the industry and her work in the past. And so that's partly why I was excited to try Help. Help is one of these card games where you have a deck of just numbered cards and you have to do something with them. And then there's some special cards. And that describes so many card games that I absolutely love, right? So I was super excited to try it. In this game, players are playing to a single line of cards, and then when the card line reaches 6, it flushes and starts over. When you play, you always have to play a card that is higher than the card that is preceding it. It doesn't have to be sequential, but it has to, you can play a 6 after a 2, that kind of thing. And the cards are numbered 1 through 11. Now, you are going to get to the point where maybe you cannot play a card that fits that rule, and then you have to call for help. In which case, then, your turn is kind of skipped, and the player next in turn order is allowed to play any card of choice from their hand instead. And then you've kind of been blocked for a turn, which actually might not be a bad thing in this game. There are special cards, so X, like jokers, can be inserted into the middle of a row, or you can switch cards, so you can swap a card from your hand to the row, or you can remove a card from the row, that kind of thing. In description, it sounds fine, but in practice, I just found there not to be any tension for us in this game. It just seemed very like you just played the cards that you had. You called for help if you needed to. Calling for help, quite frankly, felt awkward, and it just didn't appeal to me in how I like to play these games. So I was disappointed with my experiences with Help. We tried it a couple ways. We tried it at 3, and then it wasn't... I say one and done, but we tried it in one session at 3, and then we tried it again in 4 to see if player count mattered, and we found the same experience happened. And yeah, so I think when I look at these kinds of card games of, just numbered cards trying to accomplish some weird placement rules, unfortunately, Help just didn't hit the mark for me to find a place amongst other games like No Thanks or Six Nimmt or Crass Carrier and that kind of thing. So Help was a one and done for me.
Yeah, it's one of those games like, you see where it was trying to go and it just didn't quite hit the mark for me anyway. I liked some of the things it was trying to do. It just the tension just wasn't there. And I know not every game needs to be a nail biter, but in this game I feel like it just needed that extra zip. So it's too bad. I'm hoping maybe they'll come out with something that has a bit more tension to it, and it will help get.
And as always, these are one and dones, and we try to be very transparent. These are not games that we've played extensively or dug into the nuances and subtleties of the gameplay. These are games that we played once, and we play a lot of games, and we've just decided it's time to move on.
Exactly. There you go.
Speaking of moving on, Mandi, there's a game pie in my sights.
We're going to pick up and deliver this game pie. I'm here for it.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Brought to you by TheOp.games, also known as USAopoly. Like, it's time for a mystery, Scoob. Scooby-Doo Escape from the Haunted Mansion brings the escape room experience to the table with the Coded Chronicles series. This thematic and immersive co-op game takes the players through this escape room in a box with the gang as they solve the mystery at the Haunted Mansion. Available now at TheOp.games or at your local game store today. Don't forget, we have a new promo code. Exclusive for Dice Tower listeners, 10% off entire purchases at TheOp.games. It's available for all games, puzzles, and accessories. Free shipping available on purchases of $49 or more. The offer is available for U.S. residents only, and the code is Dice Tower.
Order up!
And now, it's time to order up a slice of game pie.
This is a game pie that I can get down with. See? So pick up and deliver. And you know what? I didn't think that I had played that many pick up and deliver games, but apparently I have. What about you, Suzanne?
I was actually kind of in the same boat when we were kind of ideating, and we should have done this when Eric was on the show, darn it. But oh well.
We totally should have.
No, I agree. It was really fun looking through Board Game Geek and going, oh yeah, I like that one. Oh yeah, oh I did that. Okay. And then, of course, I end up in this situation where I'm like, oh shoot, I have too many games and not enough room in the pie. So that's a good situation to be in.
Exactly. I mean, nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to start off with a real good one. And I probably mentioned it before now that I think about it, but Firefly. So I'm a fan of the show. I know lots of people are a fan of the show, and they had that game, which is, if you don't know, massive. The first time I played it, thanks to my friend Matt, this game took up 2 tables. One table was just for cards, money, etc., and then the other one was for the board. So that should tell you what kind of game we're playing with here. But it was very thematic, definitely had that element of, picking certain things up, delivering to certain locations, and then you had characters with special abilities that helped you to do so. So Firefly, I know, it's been out for a while. It's really good, and don't be intimidated by the 3+ hour gameplay and the amount of components. I found it very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think what people are going to get upset at is that it's hard to get.
I know.
So hang on to your coffee, Mandy. First slice up for me, Steamrollers. Hello, it's a roll and write game, people. But don't underestimate Steamrollers. First of all, Steamrollers, for those of you who don't recall, it really was one of the first roll and write games that really showcased you could do more than just bingo. You could do more than just Yahtzee. That you could really build some complexity and depth into this format, and awesome job. But Steamrollers is a train-based game where you are rolling dice, drawing paths between hexagons, but that's because you need to go pick up cubes and deliver them to the appropriate locations on the board, building up your train engine, building up your routes, all that good stuff. Steamrollers is still a great game. It holds up really, really well. Great roll and write, and hello, lovely pick up and deliver game.
Such a good game. I haven't played it many, many times, so definitely one people should take a look at. The next one on my list is a Feld. I feel like it's been a while since I've had a good Feld on the list, and I feel like this may be mixed results for some people, but the Oracle of Delphi, or as Americans say, Delphi, I enjoyed this game a lot, and I definitely think it's one that was different than some of the other Felds that existed already, and I think people weren't sure how to feel about it. So for me, this is one that I enjoyed the concept. I know some people were not crazy about the art, but I thought I appreciated that it was different than the norm. So the norm of Feld, I should say. So the Oracle of Delphi was one that I quite enjoyed, and that's why it made the list.
Excellent. I like it too. My next slice, Imperial Spells and Steam. This is a level 99 game. It has you combining magic and trains, and you get to build out an action board of train cars in front of you that dictate what actions you can take. You're putting your trains out on the board, trying to get to different cities so that you can deliver the different resources that the cities call for to get points. I love the combination of building up your actions on your train, and I love the pick up and deliver part of it as well. Imperial, really fabulous pick up and deliver game.
Yeah, very nice. I like that one too. All right, this one is a game. Okay, now, don't judge me here. I haven't played it for a while. It's a big game, but I've played it enough times to know that I really enjoy it, and that is Tramways. So Tramways is, I like the 1920 kind of aesthetic to the game, and It is literally creating rail routes where you are taking passengers and bringing them to specific areas of the board, but you also need the right tickets and cards to do so. So it gets a little tricky, and this is the one I mentioned before that has a really interesting auction element, which I didn't think that I would like, but I do here. So Tramways definitely is one where it literally is taking passengers, picking them up, and moving them to where they need to go. Really like this game. I remember my first play of this being very frustrating because we didn't know what was going on. But once you figured it out, chef's kiss. So good. And they make a book, which we were talking about, that you can play solo, which is the essence of the game. But you have a book that you can draw routes at with a marker, and it gives you the same kind of feel as the original. So Tramways, yeah. So good.
Yeah, I love that book. That's a really great experience. My next slice, Akrotiri. Akrotiri is, well, a 2-player game, and you've got Tile Lane that's got, the tiles have water and island spaces on them, so you get to build out the space that you're working in. You have goal cards in your hand, and one of the greatest things about Akrotiri is that it really depends on where you're sitting in terms of whether or not you can reach a goal, because the way that things are laid out on your card have to match, even including orientation on the tableau that you're building out. So there's a really interesting element to that. But part of reaching those goals are picking up different cubes that are around and making sure they get to the right place where they need to go. That lovely pick up and deliver element is very strong here. You get a little boat that you can put the cubes in. It's very cute. Akrotiri is a wonderful game, and I think it got a lot of attention. It's not that it did get attention, but I still love it, and I want more people to discover it. Akrotiri.
Very nice. That's a good one, too. And I wish I could play that one more, so definitely bump it up on my 2-player game list. All right, well, my last slice of pie, well, it's a very Canadian slice of pie because a fellow friend designed it, and that is Yukon Airways. And it is exactly how it sounds. You've got people trying to get to the place, and you want to satisfy the conditions to get them to where they need to go. An element that I like in this game is that it has dice, which are a factor in moving around the boards and to specific colored areas. So Yukon Airways, I think, came out a couple of years ago, and I remember playing it when it was a prototype, and then when it came to fruition, it looked even better and played really well when it was complete. So if you haven't tried it and you do like pick up and deliver, but you don't want something that's overly complex, but just the right amount, I think it's a nice, comfortable place where it sits. Really good game. Yukon Airways, give it a go.
Lovely. And our last slice of pick up and deliver pie. Mandi, you opened up with a licensed IP game. I'm going to wrap with one. Star Wars Outer Rim. Oh my gosh. I love Star Wars Outer Rim. And it's one of those games that the first time I played it at a convention, my friends brought it. It sparked for me. I just but I held back from buying it.
Right.
Because I thought, no, my friends have it and they're the ones and then months went by and I couldn't, I wanted to play it all the time. Yeah, I ended up buying it for myself too. I had to. Star Wars Outer Rim, of course, set into this Star Wars universe. You create this arc of space area that have different planets and you're getting missions. You've got a ship that you can build up. Events happen as you're going along. There's narrative elements as you land on different planets. You can avoid patrols or hit them. You have alliances that you get to manage. But really at the heart, it really is a pick up and deliver game set in that universe that so many of us love so much. They recently announced that they're expanding it. I didn't know if they were going to continue to support it that way. I was ecstatic.
Oh.
Day one buy for me is that expansion. Star Wars Outer Rim, excellent, entertaining, fun, rewarding pick up and deliver game. Oh, so good, Mandi.
I haven't played it, but I've heard such good things, so I feel like I am going to have to make an effort to try it at some point.
No, when you come out and visit me, we'll play, okay?
We gotta make a schedule for all these games, I tell you.
I know. You're coming for so for those of you, yeah. Mandi's going to come out and hang out with me, maybe with Ashley as a shark.
Yes.
And we're going to just play games for a whole week together. But I feel like our game schedule is already pretty full.
It's so much.
I think we'll have to write it down. Alrighty, folks. We'll call that an episode. Mandi, I think we're going to have to get some Q&A done pretty soon here. It's really funny. After our last episode where you talked about how you're behind on emails, and I said I wasn't, which of course, because I really am behind. I got more emails of people making fun of Us being behind on emails. People.
But here's the thing, though. We read them. It's not like we don't read them. We know, we see them. But I'm telling you, so let me put it out there. I'm getting a promotion at my job. Yay! Unfortunately, this promotion comes with a lot of paperwork. And I've been doing it on my free time to get it done, and it's due this coming week, so the week of this podcast. So that has been my focus for the past 2-3 weeks. So after it is done, I can breathe, get to things, but I guess I should thank you all in a way for your patience, because now it allows me to get this promotion guilt-free, so to speak, but then I will definitely get back to talking to all of you. So just putting it out there.
So yeah, feel free to just keep on piling on, folks. You can reach me at Suzanne at DiceTower.com.
And yes, pile on, but I do enjoy the very lovely messages that come along with it. And send those to me at Mandi, that's Mandi with an I, at DiceTower.com.
As always, we're so grateful that you join us here for the podcast, and we just... I think the animal companions thread really just showed what a great group of people and how much fun people who enjoy board games can be together. And we really appreciate you and value you. So thank you for being here for another episode. Next episode, take a listen, because Tom and Eric are going to fess up about games that they should have played but haven't yet.
Ruh-roh.
Which, Mandi, honestly, we could probably do a game pie about that too. I feel like that would make a really good game pie for us too. Maybe we'll double up with the guys on that.
Yeah, I think so.
Until next time, everyone, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassal.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric, with assistance from Roy Canaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at podcast@dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, everybody, it's that time again for Two Truths and a Lie. And, well, how convenient that we're recording this on a Sunday. So I'll start first for mine from last episode. On Sundays, I do nerdy stuff. On Sundays, I clean the house. And on Sundays, I watch a movie. If you said on Sundays I watch a movie is the lie, you would be correct. I do all of those things and more, but I just don't have time to squeak that movie in there. So hopefully things will change, but that's where that sits at the moment.
It seems like you play a lot of video games before you watch movies.
I do. That's accurate.
Last episode I said, in Slay the Spire, I've beaten the heart with the defect, I've beaten the heart with the silent, and I've beaten the heart with the ironclad. And the lie is that I've beaten the heart with the ironclad, which I accidentally revealed. And it's so funny because a listener pinged me on Twitter because I was posting photos of my lack of progress with the ironclad, and they wrote back and they're like, well, I guess you just spoiled Two Truths and a Lie. Oh, whoops, no, you're right, you got me.
See, our listeners are on the ball.
I love it.
All right, new this episode, here we go. I there was a theme here if you couldn't tell. I own several types of D100s. I own several types of D6s, and I own several sets of RPG dice. So there you go. Good luck with that one.
And new for me, I guess I'm influenced by the pop culture du jour. I've played Dune the board game, I've played Dune Imperium, and I've played Dune the dice game.
Oh, good one this episode. Good luck, everyone.